Hello, everyone. Welcome to a fantastic episode of David Walker explaining why his value to your company is important. Anyway, I'm David Walker. I'm Atlanta business attorney. I've been practicing for 24 years, exclusively with business owners, helping them start their business, buy businesses, sell businesses, raise capital, and generally act as the corporate counsel on all business-related matters. Before I became a corporate attorney doing my own practice, I used to work at big law firms. I was president of a venture capital firm. Venture capital is, instead of flip this house, it's flip this business. So I served as president and corporate counsel for a venture capital firm. I took a couple companies public, a Korean company public in the US, a US company public in Germany, and became corporate counsel to a public company. Anyway, about 16 years ago, I left all that so I can work with people like yourself here in Atlanta, business owners. I think it's important to also know what I don't do. I don't do any litigation, no divorce, criminal DUI, or bankruptcy. So 100% in business. So the Community Navigator program was founded by the SBA, and the SBA partnered with local entities, in this case, Select Fulton and Greater South Fulton Chamber of Commerce, to offer professionals like myself a chance to give businesses like yourself professional advice related to their business. And they're paying me. So this isn't, hey, just come on, do something for free. And, hopefully everything goes well. This is actually, something that is going to benefit you and is paying me to benefit you. So I need you to interact. You need to show the SBA that I'm doing my job by having these conversations with you. This is the beginning of a series of seminars and webinars that you can sign up for through the South Fulton website. But today, my topic is, what can a business attorney do for your business? I am what's considered a spoke in this process, and the SBA is what's considered a hub, or the South Fulton is a hub, and the hub has about 7 or 8 spokes that will be providing services to you. You're the tire that makes it all go round. So this is really designed for you to get your specific questions out. If you're shy, you're blowing money at $449 an hour and having an attorney on board, you need to ask every single question you could possibly imagine. I believe there will be also some in-person sessions and some one-on-one training. Again, I think you should register at the website. And this is a big thank you for these organizations pulling all of this together to make it happen for us. It's not often that you're able to bring in professionals and give businesses one-on-one help that isn't volunteer work. And if most of you have done volunteer work or have done something for free, that's a lot different than when they have to pay for your services. So I treat this very seriously. I hope to provide you good insight into business law and the things that make sense for your business. I try to talk matter-of-factly. So again, excuse me for any grammatical errors or any syntax errors, then people interpreting, or accents that I might interpret my Detroit accent as being rough or something. I enjoy what I do, though. I love working with business owners. I have a great lineup of topics to talk about. I think that you'll enjoy it as well. So with that being said, we'll get started. So here is a general outline of the things that a business attorney can do for your business. In general, you need to have a corporate entity. So let's start with that. I do not represent the individual. I represent the actual business itself. And what I do is I have to kind of explain to the individual the differences between themselves and the business that they are creating or already created. One of the things that you have to learn in my industry is that words mean something. Each word means something in my business. We don't just casually say words. A word you're going to have to get real used to is the word entity. Okay. If you had a vocabulary list, and we probably should start that, right? If you had a vocabulary list, you're going to write down the word entity. Why? Because an entity is the separate embodiment of business, separate from you. You are a person, and the business is an entity. Now, how do we legitimize the entity? How do we make it do the same thing that a person can do? And there's a process to go through to making your business be the same as a person. And we'll talk about that. But you need to be a business entity. And there are different kinds of business entities. And business entities are taxed, just like a person is taxed. And so you have to pick the right tax for your business entity. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk today about what can an entity do, right? And I think you'll be surprised, and you'll probably be a little bit, focused in on forming your own entity because it is an important part of the process. So that's what we do. We tell you what entities are. We help you become a real entity. We separate your personal assets from your business assets. We try to protect the business assets by creating agreements between your business and other businesses, agreements between you and your customers, agreements between you and your vendors, suppliers, not you, sorry, your entity, between your entity and suppliers and your entity and customers. And then we assert contractual rights on behalf of your entity, as well as defend them when people come after your entity. And we generally serve as the entity's business attorney on all contractual matters. And at the end of the day, our job is to preserve the entity and to make sure it survives. Because without a business entity, there could be no business attorney. So hopefully you heard the word entity enough to know I really need to get one. But let's go over some of the reasons specifically why you might need to get one. The first thing that did you know an entity can do is you can open up a bank account. You can actually open up a bank account in the entity's name, the name that you establish with the Secretary of State. So when you go to form an entity, you have to talk to the state. The state says to all you business owners out there, hey, we want you to file an entity with us in our state of Georgia. And if you do that, we're going to give you protection from your personal assets and protection from lawsuits against your personal asset. And we have a lot of choice of entities to choose from. We have the limited liability company, the LLC. We have the corporation. We have the partnership, limited partnership. We can go on and on. You can find the entity choices at the Georgia Secretary of State. But once you select an entity, and then once you register that entity with the IRS, so there's two choices when you select an entity. There's one at the state level, and then there's one at the federal level, the IRS. So once you form your LLC or corporation, then you have to go to the IRS and say, hey, I have an entity, but I need a tax ID number or EIN, because like people, your entity needs a social security number. And in our business, it's called the EIN. It's actually the same number of digits. You have 8 digits for your social security number. It's the same thing for or 9 digits. You have the same thing for an EIN. So after you form your business, which is like its birth certificate, you also have to go out now and get a social security number. Those two documents, your business entity creation document, or what's called the articles, that's another defined term, articles of incorporation for a corporation, articles of organization for an LLC. But your articles helps form your entity. Same thing as a birth certificate. And then the IRS issues you your EIN or your social security number. And that's where you go to get that. You can get both of them online, but we as attorneys can do it faster than you can. I could probably form an entity. Oh, it's past noon, but I could have formed one by noon. I certainly can form one by tomorrow. It gets expensive, but sometimes it dictates that. But one of the benefits of an attorney is that you don't have to figure that out. If you say, hey, I need an article at EIN, you call me. Dave, I need to form an entity. I need an EIN and I need the articles. I'll take care of it. Now you can go right now, pause this video, log in to Georgia Secretary of State, log into the IRS and try to figure it out yourself. This is a free country. But for those of you who are not into that, not interested in becoming a corporate lawyer, you will hire an attorney. Now, some people use LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, and if we had to equate the legal services to transportation vehicles, LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer would be a bicycle. Hey, it gets you to where you have to go, but you might be cold, you might be, tired, but you get there, maybe, if the chain doesn't slip. Well, in those terms, I'm a Ferrari. I take you there quickly, in comfort and in style, and it's perfectly and precisely exact. And so, is LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer a horrible way to start your company? No. I have some clients that come in all the time, but oftentimes you don't know what you're clicking. And you just click a bunch of random things or they make suggestions and you really don't know. And then secondly, it takes a long time. I think it takes like 2 or 3 weeks, they'll tell you sometimes. Well, you just heard me. I can form it in the same day if necessary. So when it comes to opening up a bank account, you'll take your documents, your articles, your EIN, and you go to the bank and you say, hey, I want to open up a bank account. They'll say, well, what's your name and social security number? No, it's not for me. It's for my business entity. And they go, oh, okay. They'll ask you, what kind of entity do you have? I have an LLC or a corporation. And you would give them those documents and they will open up a bank account in your business entity's name. Now, you as a person can be added as a signatory to the business's bank account. Or if you have somebody else, maybe a spouse, maybe another business partner, other humans can be added as a signatory to that bank account without being on the articles or the EIN. So if you're the sole owner and you want to go in and add a spouse or add somebody else to your bank account for your business, you can do that without changing your articles filed with the state. So until you have a business bank account, you really aren't an entity. I mean, you can form an entity, but you got to have money. You got to put money into a bank account, and then you got to figure out how do we get more money into that bank account. Well, that's what it's the point of business. Is that after you got that business account open and you put $100 in to start it up, you're going to spend a little bit of time excited that you're able to accomplish that, but it's going to hit you. How do I get more money into this account? And that's an important step to business. Is a lot of people don't get this far though. A lot of people have problems getting to this point of opening up a bank account. And that's what a business attorney can help with. The next issue, let's see, this is all a surprise to me. I did this, but I don't know what the button next is coming up. So it's going to be exciting. Oh, borrow money. Love it. So just like a person, your business entity can borrow money. And just like a person, there's credit reporting agencies for the business. So you have Dun & Bradstreet, which is one been around for a long time, and Experian. I believe there's other ones now. The differences, however, between the personal credit report and the business credit report is that personal credit, they take your credit whether you pay them or not. Meaning that if you're late on the bill, it's going to get updated on your account whether you like it or not. If you add a car or a mortgage to your credit, it's going to get added to your account whether you pay them or not. In business, it's not like that. In business, you have to pay them to monitor your credit and provide them with the contacts for your credit. So when you go out to establish business credit, be aware that you're probably going to have to pay for a service to monitor your credit. I know. You're like, man, that's crazy, but it's true. So how can so say, Dave, okay, I form my LLC, open up a bank account. I want to borrow some money. I registered with Dun & Bradstreet. What are some of the things that go into borrowing money? Well, your business needs to be a little bit older. Usually I recommend 2 years. 2 years from what date? The date of your articles. So if you formed your article today, February 28th, then in February 28th, 2024, you'd be eligible for more loans. I didn't say all loans, I said more loans. Some people, some organizations will give you your entity a loan right now, but they'll do it based upon your personal credit. So you will go to your bank and say, hey, I want to get a loan. Say, what's your name? Oh, I'm going to use an entity. They'll look at your entity and say, you just formed this February 28th. Can't use this. This entity is not old enough. I'll loan the money to you, and then you can put it into your entity, but you're responsible for it. So in that case, it's a personal loan that you would use to put into your company. At some point, you want to be able to have your company borrow that money, but early on, you might have to use your own personal credit. Anytime you're going to get borrow money for the entity, you need to make sure that you only provide the entity's EIN. Anybody that asks you for your personal social means that either one, they're going to ding your personal and do an inquiry, and or two, you're going to be personally liable. So a good way to understand the difference when you borrow money between yourself and your entity is whether you have to provide your social security number. Now, again, sometimes they want to do what they call a security check just to make sure you are who you are and it's not going to show up. So you want to inquire to them, why are you using my social? Will this show up on my credit report? And or was it just an inquiry? Because oftentimes the business loans should not show up on your personal loan, even if you're guaranteeing it. So you might guarantee it, they might run a credit check, but they should not show up on a regular basis on your personal. If they do, it's a co-obligation, and it's not as effective as just having the loan directly to the entity itself. You want to do everything you can to find the kind of loans that's in the entity. Now, why does that matter? What it matters is if your entity is doing business and it's doing well, of course it doesn't matter who pays it because it needs to pay. But if things go bad in your business, then only the assets of the business are at stake if the entity signs the loan. If you sign it and guarantee it, then the entity goes down. You're like, oh, there's no more entity. And they say, no, you signed it personally. So the benefits of that entity having its own loan is really to minimize them coming back at you. What else is here? Number 3, sign contracts. So your business entity should sign any obligation that the business has with a third party or a customer. You get a lease, it should be signed by your business entity. You sign up for, Comcast at your business suite, it should be signed by your business entity. And how do you know that? Your business entity's name with the LLC or the corporation at the end of it should be on the signature line. And you should be signing not as your personal self, but as some officer or some authorized signer of the entity and giving yourself a title. Now, we can get into titles later and things like that, but essentially you as the owner of the company should be signing it. And unless it says the company's name at the top of the contract and when you sign and you tell them, hey, I'm signing as the officer of this company, then it's a company contract. If you don't have that language of the LLC at the front, because you told the salesperson, hey, I'm going to do it for my entity, I'm going to do it for my entity, but they went back to the back and put your car lease contract in your personal name, you need to look at that and make sure it has your entity. And you say, no, this is in my entity's name. This is my entity's name and EIN. Please put this contract in my entity's name. So a lot of times what I do with clients is when I look at contracts, the first thing I look at is who's the contracting party. And 99% of the time, they try to put in the person. And I go, no, this is the entity. And then that starts a conversation. Oh, well, we don't really want to do entities, or you force them to have that explanation of why it's not an entity. But you should feel more confident in the situation when you're only your business on stake versus you personally. So that's a big plus for an entity, is that it can sign contracts, it can sign leases. Every contract you can sign, an entity can sign. So that's the benefit of having a business entity. Let's see what's next. Own real estate. Ooh, this is good. So a lot of times people will go out and want to acquire real estate. They want to flip the house, or they want to get some rental properties. And I try to explain to them that when you buy the house needs to be in the entity's name. So that freaks them out. Oh, I put it in my name. I put it in me and my wife's name, or me and my husband's name, and And oh, am I going to be in trouble? What should I do? Don't freak out. Don't freak out. If your property doesn't have a mortgage on it, oftentimes you can quick claim the property into your entity's name. Again, talk to a real estate attorney expert on this, but essentially that's not an issue. The only time it really becomes an issue is when you have a mortgage or some sort of security on the real estate, and the person doesn't like you transferring it from your name to an entity unless you talk to them. So you might need to talk to your mortgage company about that. Now, sometimes people will be in contract to purchase a property and have the contract to purchase the property in their individual name. That's okay. Just let them know at closing, this property will go into my entity's name, not my name. So you say, Dave, what about the mortgage company? What are they going to say about this entity? And I say, the mortgage company might very well say, look, you have a loan from us. I'm willing to give it to you and your spouse, but I'm not willing to give it to this business entity. You can ask them, well, how about you give it to the business entity and I personally guarantee it? That means that I would like to have the mortgage in my entity's name, but I don't want to be, and I'm okay with being responsible for it, but I want to establish my entity's credit. I want to establish my entity's ownership by having the entity in the real estate. Each piece of property you have should be its own LLC. So oftentimes people will form a holding company, Real Estate Holdings LLC, and buy 6 properties and put them all under the same LLC. That's exposing risk, meaning if something happens at one, it can affect all 5. Technically, you should have a holding company, and then each property you purchase should have its own separate LLC. So Main Street should have its own LLC, Fairview Drive should have its own LLC. And then if you either have a joint partner for that transaction, or you have a tenant, or you flip it, it's only related to that one entity. Now, that can be expensive. We talked about forming these entities, but that's something that you should consider as you go into real estate, is to make sure the entity owns the real estate as opposed to the individual person. Okay, what's next on our potpourri of topics? Buying a vehicle. We touched on this a little bit. A lot of this comes up in trucking. If you're into transportation or logistics, is your entity can get a vehicle, get the insurance, and all of that should run through the entity, because God forbid, if there's an accident that the insurance doesn't cover, you don't want to be personally liable. So if you are needing a vehicle for your business, whether a car, truck, whatever, make sure you form a business entity to own it. And that's something that me as an attorney can help you look at, whether it's your lease or you're purchasing, and making sure the title of the vehicle is going into the name of the entity. You need that to happen because, again, we talked about this. We want all of our assets inside the entity, as opposed to owning us personally and us being personally liable for it. Again, they might ask you to guarantee it, which depends on the how old your entity is and what is its bank account looks like, is probably normal within the first 2 years. But it doesn't hurt to ask, to say, hey, can I just have it in my entity's name? But don't be offended if they say no. Don't, like Dave said, you got to put it in the entity's name. It's really up to negotiations, right? It's whoever's going to accept it. Hey, I'm going to go to another dealership. They don't want a personal guarantee. You got to try to figure that out. Okay. And sometimes you're like, I'm going to make the payments anyway, so this is all good. I'll just do the personal guarantee. What we got next? Oh, go public. This is good. Ultimately, when we all get into business, we will sometimes dream of that day on Wall Street where you ring the bell and your company's going public. Well, this same entity that you form with these articles and these EIN, every single publicly traded company started with that. They started with articles and an EIN, period. There's no other jumpstart way to get into business. So just know that the potential for your business to become a publicly traded company is there with an entity. Now, what does that mean? So you own the entity outright when you first form it. But suppose you wanted to, I don't know, sell pieces of it, right? And think of going public as you breaking your company up into million or 2 million little pieces, and then you're putting a set of pieces out there for people to trade between themselves. Now, you can't do that when you first form it and just go out and go public. There's certainly a lot of regulations that you have to jump through in order to get there, and a lot of money you have to spend on audits for financials, attorneys to prepare all the documents, and then you got to have people willing to trade your stock. You got to have brokers and these people out there willing to go out there and promote your stock to other people to buy it and sell it and create a trading base. And it's a process, but your entity can do that. You cannot do that. You can't go public. I guess you can become a public figure, but you can't go public. And one of the attractive things about a business entity is one day you might try to split your company up into little pieces and sell it off for the public to trade. And while you and your pieces increase in value, well, you form an entity, you put yourself in play for that. Not everybody makes it there, but at least you're in play for it. Okay, buy plane tickets. People don't know this, but an entity can buy your plane tickets for events you have to go to. Suppose you had to take a time to go to Orlando for a convention. Your entity can pay for it through its business bank account or its credit card that it gets. So people don't realize that if you have a business and you're paying for plane tickets, you probably don't need to do that. You probably can pay for that through your business entity. Now, of course, talk to your accountants, but there's a lot of ways you can tie your travel and your plane tickets to your business. If you do any business on this trip, it counts. So I'm not going to get into the details on how to put all your expenses, personal expenses, into your business. You should talk to your accountant about how that works, but just know that the capability is there for your business to pay for plane tickets and to pay for other things. You might say, Dave, why would I want my business to pay for all this stuff? It's because when your business brings in money and it's going to be taxed, but the government says, I'm not going to tax you on the money you bring in. I'm going to tax you on the money you have left after you pay for your business expenses. So if you made $1,000 and you have a $400 plane ticket, the IRS is going to tax you on the difference, $600. If you have $1,000 and you paid for your plane ticket personally, and you did not pay it through the business, then the IRS is going to tax you on $1,000. So you know the difference between a tax on $1,000 and a tax on $600. So you only really are going to spend money in your business that is there from the money you make. But if, to the extent that you have expenses in the business that the entity should pay for, you should do that because essentially you're getting that tax-free. And the idea is that a business doesn't operate on just cash, it has to have expenses. So your leases, your vehicle, your attorney's fees, your bank fees, your plane tickets, those are all part of your expenses that you incur when you have a business entity. And that's one of the cool things about a business entity is that it can pay for some of these things. You can hire people, right? A business entity can go out and bring people on board. Now, it's a process to it. You have to register with the Department of Labor, you have to register with the Department of Revenue, but essentially a business entity can hire people. It can say, hey, I'm going to open up, I'm going to hire this person, I'm going to sign a contract with this employee, and I'm going to pay them on an hourly basis. Not me, my business entity. And so I don't hire them personally, the business does. But that's one of the other beautiful things about business entities. As you grow and you need help, you can actually hire or employ people through the business entity. And it's going to cost you a little bit of extra money, meaning that if you employ somebody for $100 a week, but you're not going to pay them $100 if they're an employee, you're going to pay $110. And they're not going to receive $100, they're going to receive 90 something dollars. So the difference between that money, the 10 extra you pay and the 10 that the employee pays, goes to the government. It goes to the state of Georgia and it goes to the IRS. That's why employing people can be expensive. So for each person that you hire at say 50,000, your true cost is going to be closer to 60,000 when you factor in all the other expenses that comes with employing people. we'll talk about this at some other time, and I'll put a footnote in it, but there's a big difference between hiring somebody as an employee, in which they get a W-2 and they sign W-4 when they join, and hiring an independent contractor who gives you a W-9 and gets a 1099 at the end of the year. There's a significant difference. The contractor, when you pay $100, they get $100, they pay their own taxes. The employee gets $90, you pay $110, and you both pay taxes. And we'll talk about that later this year. So you need to keep registering for this event. And if you don't know where to register, go down at the bottom, navigatessf.com. It'll take you to everything you need to register for these events coming forward. So stay on. When my series will have me recap all these things, and then I'll get into the next one on each session. So today we're just going to hit all these bullet points and go from there. If you have any questions for me, again, put it in the chat. That's the best way for me to respond, or raise your hand, do something, scream, yell, and then I'll answer them if I'm saying something or you want to follow up on anything that I've mentioned so far. Okay, so what's next? What else can an entity do? Oh, it can train people. So suppose you have people come into your business, employees, and you need to train them and get them prepared. You can expense that out on whatever it takes to get that person up to speed for what they're learning. So if they need a laptop, if they need training, professional training somewhere, the entity can pay for that. And so you want to have an entity in place for these people in case you need to train them, whether they're hourly workers or officers of the company, meaning yourselves. If you need training, the company can pay for that. So again, this is another benefit of having a real business entity. Let's see what else we got here. Apply for government contracts. So a business entity has to make money, has to increase the bank accounts so you can borrow money and you can buy real estate and you can buy plane tickets, etc. Well, one of the things you can do is business entity can contract with regular customers. You know, somebody's shipping a truckload of water. You can ship that water and charge them, you know, $1,400 or whatever for the shipment. That's one way of generating revenue. However, the government has actually said, we want to hire business entities for some of the things that we do. The government really doesn't do anything. They just hire a lot of contractors to do stuff for them. But they also have rules and processes. They're not going to hire you personally. They'll hire your business entity. And so one of the benefits of doing that is say, hey, I'm going to form a business entity and go after government contracts. Government could be city of Atlanta. It could be the state of Georgia. It could be the US government. And there's processes and people in this program that can help you with all aspects of that. But when you have a business entity, that's how it all makes it all possible. That's how you can get started is, you know, hey, I'm going to form a business entity and I'm going to try to, you know, go out and make hay and get contracts with the government. I would not recommend that you make the government your sole source of contracts. I would recommend you get other contracts leading up to it or in addition to it. I don't think you should spend all your time in your business just saying this business was built for government contracting. Whatever service or product you sell, you still need to get regular people and regular companies to hire you because the government's going to ask, who else you work for? Like, oh, I don't work for anybody. I was waiting to work for you. That's not a very attractive offer to a business, to the government. So they want to know, yeah, I've been doing this for a couple years or 3 years, and I've had some other jobs, and here's the history, and here's some of my other clients, and I'm trustworthy for you to work in your business, because they don't want a business that's formed on February 28th doing business with them at the government level, right? They want to know that, hey, you've been doing it for a while, very similar to we talked about credit reporting agencies. So, you know, if you do plan on going into government contracting, you still need to get out and get regular contract before you get the government contract, or at the same time you're applying. Let's see if we have any more buttons left here. Oh, we have another button. Oh, that's going to lead us actually to our 1 o'clock session. If you look at our chat room, you'll see that we'll have a 1 o'clock session on Is Your Company Investor Ready, in which I will cover topics relating to investment in business entities. But one of the great things that I specialize in as a business attorney is helping you and your entity issue ownership in exchange for investment money. Oftentimes business owners run out of their own money, but opportunity keeps coming and they need more money to pursue these opportunities. Well, the beautiful thing about a business is that you can bring in investors to give you money in exchange for some form of compensation. And some of that is ownership. Now, it's not always ownership. You might borrow the money, just like you would with a bank, and pay them back. My job as the attorney is to sort of help you figure out what's the best way to bring in money from the outside. And these investors could be anywhere from friends and family to banks to investment bankers. You never know. But the issue is that with the business entity, you can offer them a piece of that company in exchange for money. Can't do that as a sole proprietor, as an individual. So, for these reasons, you will need to have a business entity to really enjoy the fruits and labors of what it means to be a business owner in America. It centers around so much of the future of your company. Now, all of the things that I've said about a business entity has been gone under the presumption that you are the sole owner. When you have other owners of a business, whether it's a group or an individual, these entities can still do all these things, but a few of these things become a little bit harder. It might be harder to borrow money if your partner doesn't have good credit. It might be harder to get a lease if your partner isn't going to sign off. It might be harder to issue ownership in the company if you and your partner are not on the same page. So in addition to all the things the entity can do, we as the business attorneys have to make sure that the owners of the entity are on the same page, and there's operating agreements and other things to make sure that happens. But for everything we talked about today was assuming a sole owner entity. And a few of these things can be affected by adding another owner. So I've talked for a while. Wait, let's make sure we don't have another button. Oh, we don't have another button. So I've talked for a while about, what it's going to take to, what can a business attorney do for your business? And I think that, there, in addition to all these things that are popping up, we can go on, but hopefully anybody who's been operating as a sole proprietor or who is not necessarily taking the time to get their LLC or corporation, hopefully they can see all the benefits they might be missing out on, and ultimately how far you need to go. It doesn't have to be expensive either. We talked about there's legal services out there. It's talked about using an attorney to do it, but it needs to get done. And the sooner you can do it, the sooner you can have your born on date, because every day you delay in forming that entity and getting that birth certificate or the articles is another day you got to wait to get government contracts and borrowing money and establishing credit. So I tell people, if they are going to go into entrepreneurship, they need to get a business entity as soon as possible, even if you don't do anything with it. Because one of the things that's great about an entity is it can just sit there. You can sit there, get the articles, the EIN, and open up a bank account and do nothing. Just have $100 sitting there till you think about what you want to do next. One of the benefits of that is that you'd have to, you get the age protection, but you also want to make sure you renew annually all of your requirements from the state to keep that entity. So you still have to pay your annual fees with the Secretary of State. Trust me, they will send you everything you need to know that annual fee is up. Ooh, we got some questions. We have some questions. All right. Miriam asked, if I have an LLC but want to limit my income, can I choose to be taxed as a corporation and pay self a salary? So this happens sometimes with people who have like disability or disability pay. They don't want the income that they make from their business entity to be included on their tax return. Because we talked about it before, that if your business makes a lot of money and you have some expenses, the government tax you on the differences between the money you bring in and your expenses. And that tax is what Miriam would like to not experience by having the income, by not having the income on her personal tax return. Because the company would say to the IRS, yeah, Miriam made this money. I put here. We're going to give it to her, and it's on her tax return. So instead, what we want to do is there's a couple of things you can do. One is you can set up. As she mentioned, a C corporation. That's a tax category, in which case you will pay the company. Excuse me, the corporation pays the tax, not the individual. So therefore, the individual never has to recognize the income. So in Miriam's case, she says, I can be an LLC taxed as a C corp, and then that would pay myself a salary, and then that way I won't have to worry about the income coming on to my personal tax return. So yes, so you can be an LLC taxed as a corporation. Some of the confusion with forming entities is people will say, I'll ask them, hey, what kind of entity are you? They'll say, I'm an S corp. S corp is a tax category. So let's back up. We talked about forming an entity at the state level. We talked about getting your tax EIN. Well, when you get your EIN, you're telling the IRS how you want to be taxed. Some people like the tax category called S corporation, but you don't need to be a corporation to be taxed as an S corporation. You can be an LLC taxed as an S corporation. Same thing if you want to be taxed as a C corporation. That's another tax category that Miriam is referring to as a C corp taxation. You can be an LLC taxed as a C corp. This is the value of an attorney, to determine what's the best way for you to do this, given your personal situation. Oftentimes, Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, they don't really get into those details. They go, you want a corporation? Here you go. You want an LLC? Here you go. And you don't really know what you did when it comes to your personal taxes and how that affected you. So yes, you can have it in an LLC taxed as a corporation and pay yourself a salary. All right, if I have already been doing business without an entity, what do I do? Keep doing business, but form an entity. So don't stop. Don't go, I don't have a business entity. I'm just going to stop doing business until I get one. Don't do that. What you want to do is just start the process of forming one, and then letting your customers and clients and everybody you deal with know, hey, from this point forward, I'll be using this business entity. So if you submit a W-9 to somebody who pays you money and they go, hey, I need you to fill out this W-9 and to ask you your social security number, you need a business entity. So you can put in the EIN instead of your social security number. So if you find yourself writing your social security number on random documents all the time related to your business, that's a bad sign. But you need to do a business entity so you can give them the EIN number. Because what's happening is you're giving these random people your social security number, and who knows what they're doing with it. They're very sloppy sometimes. They leave it on the desk, they put it in a folder. Who knows? They get fired, they change jobs, and your social security number is on some random piece of paper somewhere. So with the EIN, which are from your LLC or your corporation, you don't have to worry about that, because the EIN is for the business and not you personally. So if I already have a business doing business without an entity, what do? Keep going, form an entity. Another question, what happens if I am one business structure but want to change to another business structure? Oh, that's a good question. So oftentimes people will come and say, hey, Dave, I saw your video. I understand that that a difference is between an LLC and a corporation, and I wanted to be taxed as a C corp, but I already formed a corporation. I understand that LLC is better than a corporation, so I would have really like to have been an LLC taxed as a corporation instead of a corporation taxed as a corporation. And there's ways to do that. I definitely get an attorney involved. I get a lot of calls about people trying to convert your entity. One way is just to start over. You know what? I messed up. I'm going to form a new entity with the right way, with the right EIN. That's one way. But if your company has been around and you don't want to lose the age of it, and you don't want to, lose all of the history of it or the contracts, then you actually can convert your entity into the right entity you need to be. And that's the benefit of an attorney as well, is that we can sort of show you the process and then navigate the process for you in conjunction with your accountant. So when people say you have an attorney and accountant, do that. But a lot of people come into my office and like, oh man, I messed up. I formed the wrong entity. And the first thing I ask them is, how long has it been? Because if you just formed it, let's just form a new one. And then two, do you have an accountant in case we need to convert it to another one, just to make sure you're not dealing with any tax issues. But it's very possible. Let's see. how does using Cash App or PayPal to process payments affect me? So the government is cracking down on figuring out where money's coming from and going to. So if you have a business and you or you personally have been accepting money, Cash App through PayPal, you can believe that they're going to tell the government that they've been giving you money. And if you haven't been paying taxes on it, you know what the government deals with that. So don't assume because you're taking PayPal or Cash App, the government doesn't know about you receiving your money. They do, and they will find out. So what we have to do is form an entity and have the entity set up a Cash App and the entity set up a PayPal and have those paid into the entity's bank account. And then you can draw your money down either as a salary or a distribution from the business entity. But the business entity should have its own Cash App, should have its own PayPal. So that way, when they tell the government, hey, I paid this LLC or I paid this corporation, you're like, I know, I was gonna pay my taxes. I'm good. I don't care if you tell them. And so you want to make sure that when you form those accounts, you use the EIN from the business and not your personal social for each of those accounts if people are going to pay you through Cash App or PayPal. Another question. If I originally set up as a corporation, but I haven't been having my annual shareholders meeting, can I get in trouble? Are there less meeting requirements with LLC? Oh, Miriam, trouble's always relative. The idea between the contract between you and the state when it comes to corporations, if you told the state, hey, I want to form a corporation, the state has requirements that you have to do to keep that. One of the requirements we talked about is you have to pay the annual fee, right? You got to pay $50 or $75. Another requirement is that you have what they call corporate governance. These are documents you got to have for your corporation that are not filed with the Secretary of State. So, obviously everybody becomes indisciplined. They form their Secretary of State, but it's only one person. They're like, I don't need to hold these meeting minutes and have these director meetings and shareholder meetings. And you don't have to. They're not going to ever come knock on your door going, hey, where's your corporate minute book to show that you've been holding all these meetings? But it's required under the state law to have that. So what happens a lot of times is it doesn't really come up until a bank asks for it or you're borrowing money. When people say, hey, can I see your corporate records? And then, people usually generally create it at that time. So the question becomes, can you get in trouble? Not directly, but indirectly. So for example, if you were to somehow be involved in some personal injury lawsuit with a truck in your business, one of the things that the other attorney is going to ask for is your corporate records. And you're going to be put in an awkward position. Either you're going to say, yeah, sure, here they are. And they're going to ask you, did you just make them? In which case you have to either one, lie and perjure yourself and go, no, I made these back when, each year I was supposed to make them. Or you're going to have to say, yeah, in which case they're going to invalidate them because you haven't been keeping them up. So you're not in trouble for not having this stuff now, but the sooner you can get it, the better, or convert to an LLC. But the LLC does not have those requirements. The LLC can just have an operating agreement and then whatever requirements you put in the operating agreement. So if you put that in your LLC, in your operating agreement, that you have to have minutes and officers and directors, then yeah, you will need to. But most of the time, people don't do that. That's what makes the LLC so attractive. You just pay the money every year and you get that protection without worrying about these minutes. But some people fly to Aruba to do their minutes. They have a meeting in Aruba. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying people have their corporations or LLC. They'll have hey, this is my annual governance meeting. Call to order. One Mai Tai, one corporate minute agenda, whatever it takes, right? Let's see. I pay contractors to do projects and pay them. Do I need to report or can I deduct that money? The answer is yes, you can deduct that money. That's easy, right? You pay somebody to do a job. The question is, do you have to report it? Your accountants will tell you, I believe it's $600, and it's certain industries. And it depends on what they're doing, but in certain cases, you might have to report to the IRS in the form of a 1099 that you pay that person money. Usually, I think it's reserved for like services and things of that nature. But you should talk to your accountant because you do have an obligation to report it and file that 1099 by the end of January. So the accountants are always, chasing down like, hey, I need to get this person's information to 1099. But you either have to one, explain why they shouldn't be 1099, or two, track them down. And good luck after you've already gave them money asking for a W-9. A lot of them are like, nah, I'm not giving you that because you're going to tell the government I took some money. So that would be a 1099. How do I know when to take my company public? When you have enough money for a lot of attorneys and accountants. Usually you go public, you know the story, there's a lot of companies that just started going public, like, Airbnb and et cetera. So it takes a while to build up enough money and reputation and things like that. And, you talk to an attorney about that. Now there's other micro ways of going public. Like, for example, there's what's called equity crowdfunding. That's very new. I just did that with one of my companies, Star Walker Industries, and we were able to raise some money from small investors in small amounts and actually give them ownership interest in the company. They used to just have donation-based portals in which you would only be able to donate tickets or water or whatever. But now you can actually give people equity or ownership interest in your company in exchange for money. And that's called equity crowdfunding. There's a lot of platforms out there that you can register for. It's a long process. We might even add it to one of these seminars, but equity crowdfunding is a way to kind of semi-public. You don't have to have all the requirements of a public company, meaning the audits and things like that. You got to submit a lot of information, but it's becoming more readily available device for a lot of small businesses to raise capital. All right, one more question, and then I'll be moving over to the other Zoom, which is about raising capital and is your company investor ready? My business is really growing, and other people want to copy my special formula. How can I protect my brand and still let others do the same thing? One of the things that you can do is sign non-disclosure agreements. So when you talk to people about your special process, you want to make sure that they have a non-disclosure agreement, that they won't talk about it. Your company says to that person, hey, I'm going to give you some information. Don't talk about it to anybody or else I'm going to sue you. Now, one of the things that you need to know about a non-disclosure agreement is just because you sign a non-disclosure agreement with another company doesn't mean you should tell them everything. Only tell them what they need to know. Like, okay, you don't need to know my whole organization. You need to know about this specific task that I need you to run. So I'm only giving you this information or access to this data because that's all you need. So sometimes people sign an NDA or non-disclosure agreement and think, oh, I can just tell them anything. That's also known as a confidentiality agreement. But also within your business, you need to have some procedures and protocols to keep your information trade secret. So you might have, secure cloud services to put your documents and files on and things of that nature. But that'd be the best way to protect your business. Obviously there's trademark protection to make sure no one steals your outward facing brand. So your name, your sign on your store, you get trademark protection from the federal government to keep that from happening. We'll probably talk about that at some point too. But that's a lot of talking. That's a lot of attorney time. I got to get ready for the next one. 1 o'clock here. I think Shar is going to put that link in the chat. So if you're interested in talking solely about how to raise capital and be an investor ready, hit that link at 1 o'clock and I'll see you over there. Thanks everybody for coming out. Have a fantastic, I get to move to the next slide finally. Have a fantastic day. Again, if you want to sign up for more of these training academies, go to navigatesf.com. I'm David Walker, Atlanta's business attorney. Thanks for sharing your time and energy and have a great day.